In our recent discussions, we have been focusing on issues of environmental sustainability with oil and gas production, particularly in the context of drought. Today we have with us Nathan Kuhnert. Nathan is an environmental health and safety professional with Devon Energy, a leading oil and gas producing independent. Nathan specializes in policy and management for Devon and is committed to building sustainable and economical water management practices across his company. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you, Dr. Puls.
So I have some questions for you today. I know Devon has experienced some challenges in the sourcing and management of water resources for their oil and gas operations, especially during the recent drought. Can you discuss how Devon has met the challenge in the context of sustainable water management?
I appreciate that question, and please let me start with clarifying sustainable water management. For this situation, I'm going to refer to those practices that are practical, they're economical, and ultimately they reduce freshwater consumption in the basin that we operate in. And oftentimes our overall water use is still pretty far down in relation to the other users in that basin. We're very proud that we have found some solutions that have been both sustainable as well as economically viable. And for instance, I'd like to share with you our Cana reuse facility. Cana is a major project at Devon's, which is approximately starting about 30 miles west of the greater Oklahoma City area. And this is in the middle of the Woodford Shale play. And we realized that the relatively low total dissolved solids that was coming back during the flowback process was relatively low. And we realized that this water was really good water, and if we can get the regulatory structure situated with the state, that we could take advantage of this tremendous resource to help augment our overall water supply. So Oklahoma Corporation Commission passed a revised pit rule, and now as a result we have a 500,000 barrel pit out in the Cana play. And that pit is designed with multiple layers of environmental protection. It has a very strong liner, it has a leak detection system, and the end result is that we'll be able to complete approximately 270 hydrocarbon wells with just the water that has been sent to that pit from our producing wells. So that's definitely a win-win situation for us. Further to the east in Oklahoma, which is the Mississippi Lime play, we're not blessed with as good of water quality in our flowback process, but we've learned and we've continued to get better frac designs, fluid designs from our service providers. So now we're able to use some of our produced water directly for our fracs as well. So those are two examples that we're able to really promote sustainability as well as actually improve our overall business process.
That's very interesting. So two things I'm hearing. One is you were able to make this work not only from an environmental sustainability standpoint, but also from an economical standpoint. And two, this issue of the difference between the two formations in terms of water quality and the challenges that presents in terms of then reusing that water. So how do you see those lessons in those two plays going forward with other locations?
No, I appreciate that because it seems that it's just been a progression. You know, about 8 years ago, we started with the Barnett Shell water recycling facility. We had lessons learned, and it's just continued. We just continue to build upon that. We've learned, of course, that not one size fits all. The water quality not only can vary from one play to another, but often it varies intra-play, as well as the volumes of water that will be coming back during the flowback process. So we have to design a system that can account for that type of variability. And another large variable that we have to plan for is that depending on what phase of your exploration process that you're in or in your actual infill drilling program, it has a huge implication of what type of infrastructure and resources you can design, for more alternative solutions that are more sustainable based. So often we want to start off with a more flexible type of design, and then later, if the play is proven to be economically viable, that's when we can really begin to develop more larger scale infrastructure to do these types of projects.
So what this means then is that you really have to take an adaptive management approach in terms of these things, since they oftentimes are unknown in terms of what you're going to encounter, how things are going to work in a particular location, and so forth.
No, absolutely. And we're still learning. I mean, we're still optimizing the process, but we definitely have made great strides in the adaptive management approach over the last couple of years.
Besides recycling of flowback produced waters, are you looking at recycling of other kinds of waters or other types of water sourcing besides just reuse and recycling?
That's a good question. A really hot topic over the last year or two has been brackish water. Brackish water is, it can be defined differently as far as what is the total dissolved solids concentration. And so brackish water from our standpoint is water that's beyond fresh. But ultimately, the higher the total dissolved solids content is, then it does create some more management hurdles to have to go through to be able to come up with the optimal process. In the state of Texas, for instance, the Texas Water Development Board is putting together a proposal to study brackish water resources in the Permian Basin. Devon currently is involved with a consortium down loosely associated with Rice University, where they're looking to be able to optimize brackish water as well. So brackish water is definitely an alternative source solution, but we just have to continue to further understand the processes and make sure it's not going to have adverse impact to our not only our frac design, but the actual formation itself that we would be injecting that solution down into. One other alternative source of water that we're looking into as well is just wastewater effluent. That hasn't been tried on a large scale practice because there's still a lot more unknowns with that, as well as logistical considerations and stakeholder concerns.
In all of this, it seems like there's an increased emphasis on working with multiple stakeholders, particularly state agencies that are involved with water quality, agencies involved with permitting. You mentioned the Oklahoma Corporation Commission and the groups in Texas. How has that been working in terms of cooperation?
It's been very successful. I think our industry has discovered, as well as Devon, that transparency is the key. We want to sit down and share our practices as well as our needs to the stakeholders and regulators so that we can all benefit together. When I say needs, that often entails, for us anyway, is having a risk-based permitting approach so that if we're transparent and we can really share with the stakeholders and the regulators just what entails our overall water management process, including the produced water that comes back during the flowback phase, then I think that that can really lead, and that has led, to more of a comfort level from the regulators and as well as the stakeholders to allowing us to do more with this produced water that comes back.
What about the general public and communities where you operate? How does that factor into this whole issue of sustainable water management? Is there more engagement with the public, the local communities, as you tackle these issues?
Yes, there definitely has been a lot more engagement, especially after the drought from 2 seasons ago. I guess that was the drought that started in, fall of 2010 and really picked up there in the following summer. But there's no question that that is a major consideration that we have to address when we go into a community, because ultimately we have to earn our license to operate. And so it's no longer just ensuring the stakeholders that we're protecting the groundwater and surface water from water quality problems, but it's actually, drawdown concerns. We have to really be transparent and give them some level of comfort that we're not going to be taking too much water out of the basin that we're operating in.
What do you see as some of the greatest challenges going forward in terms of the whole issue of sustainable water management?
That's a good question. As we alluded to earlier, there's been tremendous technological advances in frac fluid designs that are more tolerant for lower quality water, as well as really innovations in the technologies around recycling and reuse. But what I believe is really necessary may not be quite as, science-based necessarily or engineering-based, but it's just overall planning, rolling up the sleeves, and getting all of these variables on the table at the same time to really design, your best water management scheme based on the environment that you're operating in. I think that's a key, as well as the stakeholders and the regulators also looking at a holistic approach when it comes to water problems. As we all know, there's multiple users in a basin, and I think to really come up with a pragmatic solution, you really have to bring all the users to the table and promote transparency and potential partnering to really come up with the best way to leverage resources to ultimately conserve water.
Well, thank you. I really want to thank you for being with us today and giving us these insights into not only how Devon is going forward and operating in new areas, but the industry as a whole. So thank you, Nathan.
Well, thank you for this opportunity.